This is a fun one. How do we buy games? Don't judge my late night snacks over there with Teddy Grahams and Hot Lays and a matcha. I know, okay? Hello everyone and welcome back to the Wolf Pack. Welcome back to another daily vlog. Today I wanted to kind of talk about how I would buy games now if I was new to the board gaming hobby, because it could be overwhelming, especially if you're looking online or if you're in a retail store or a friendly local gaming store. There's a lot of things to choose from. So how do you decide what games you should get? Well, the first one, and I know people always say like don't judge a book by its cover, but for board games that doesn't always, it still holds true, but to a point. So let's use one game as an example today to not make it overwhelming. I'm gonna look at this one, Apothecary. This is a game where I absolutely love the cover art. It's minimalistic. I love the white background because then everything that's in color is purely in focus. The art has a lot of fantastic and whimsical elements. I love this fantasy theme. And the reason why the art matters so much, especially in board games versus in books, is because a lot of times you're gonna be staring at this and all the contents in it. Versus in books, you only see text when you go dive into the book, right? You only see the cover art of the book, and then you never see artwork again, unless it's like a special illustrated Lord of the Rings version. But for the most part, what you see is what you get for board games. So like the artwork for the cards and everything that are inside the board games are gonna look just like this. So if you don't mind looking at the artwork, then you're gonna have a great time, because the last thing you wanna do is get a game that you think is ugly and then you stare at that game, and no matter how fun it is, if it's just consistently something that you don't want to look at, you're gonna be less inclined to open it, you're gonna be less inclined to look at the rulebook, you're gonna be less inclined to play it at all. So here's a good example, right? The rulebook looks exactly like the cover art. You have the player boards, which look very, very similar in style. Back of the player boards. You saw that this game was called Apothecary, and you see all these little cakes and potions and everything. Well, inside too, look at this. You have diagnoses cards, and on the back, you have what they are riddled with, those illnesses. This one, crippling fear, and you get a little cake. See? So if you like that kind of artwork in the cover art, you are going to love the artwork in the actual game. So for my first tip, as baseline as it may seem, pick something that you enjoy looking at, because you're gonna be staring at it a lot. And then to narrow it down even further, what you also wanna do is you want to look at the play time and the player count. Now let's look at player count first. This one says for 1 to 4 players. That's really important because later on, if you want to get into some solo gaming, it's important to see that this game has a solo mode, which is why it's designated for 1 player at the very minimum. And then every game is going to have a different player count. You can't play every game with a different number of people. I think one of my biggest misconceptions when I first started playing was like, oh, it doesn't matter how many people there are. Like if there's 5, we'll just, I don't know, we'll just adjust and play together or something. But that doesn't work. Every game has built-in components for that specific player count. For instance, this one, we have a set of directions. We have the east, west, south, and north Apothecary. So with all of these sections, sadly, there is no northeast and southeast and northwest. So even if you want to play this game with 5 players, you are limited to having 4 player boards. So the 5th player cannot physically play this game because there isn't enough stuff for them to use unless they share a player board or something, but that's nowhere near as fun as having their own. A lot of the times though, for 4-player games, they'll have like a 5th player expansion module that you can look out for. Typically, it may not be in the same like store if you happen to pass by. Okay, now aside from player count, we also talked about the overall game length. Now this is one that you definitely want to take with a grain of salt, because half the time I don't even believe what they actually are. This one's pretty spot on though. Apothecary says 60 minutes, so it's around that estimated time, but you also have to consider the setup time, which is probably going to be 10 to 15 minutes if it's a light to medium game, like this one's about 10 minutes. And then you also have to take in the amount of time it takes you to learn the rules, which will take, like for me, I would say for someone that's new, it might take you about 30 minutes to learn the rules. So if you factor all those things together, it's going to be almost double the amount of time that's listed here. Don't let that intimidate you. I just wanted to say that to make sure it is transparent that you also have to think about how long it takes to set up a game and also how long it takes for you to learn it. And then of course, you're gonna get faster and faster the more games you play. So that learning time may go from 30 minutes to 20 and then 15, and who knows, by then you'll just be super fast. Now, a lot of the times we may not have the luxury to open up these games in store because they're shrink wrapped and everything. So one other thing that I can suggest as a helpful tip is that on the back, you wanna look for two things. One is the theme. So in this case, this one says, in Apothebakery, players assume the role of culinary alchemists, healers, strategically collecting resources, brewing elixirs. If that theme, that's a one-line theme, which I think is perfectly shown here. If that's something that you think is interesting, then keep going. So then we narrow down to the next part, and this is arguably the most important part, which is finding out what are you doing in the game. And if it sounds interesting and fun to you, then you're more likely to enjoy it. And this one actually has it embedded right in that same paragraph. It says, it says that you'll be strategically collecting resources, brewing elixirs, casting powerful spells, and baking cakes of salvation to heal adventurers on the brink of doom. Are you ready to sweeten the fate of the bravest heroes? And that is spot on for exactly what Apothebakery is doing. So that's exactly what you can expect when you are playing this game as someone who has actually played Apothebakery. And what I also love about the back of this one is that it even breaks down exactly what your actions are on your turn. You have a foraging phase where you're going to be gathering resources. You have an alchemy phase where you're actually brewing the potions. And then you have a healing phase. And this is ultimately how you win in the game, because the more adventures that you heal, then the more points you score, and ultimately that determines the winner for Apothebakery. So in summary, you want to look at the theme, see if that resonates with you, and then narrow down what you're doing on your turn. And then, buying board games is a big choice, it's a big commitment, because then if not, it's just gonna sit on your shelf, what we like to call a shelf of shame, for those that know, because sometimes we just buy games and they sit there and they collect us and we don't realize that, oh shoot, we're actually collecting these games instead of playing with them. So then if you're in store and you're browsing and you wanna narrow it down even further to see if it really is a good fit for you, ultimately, a lot of these games will have a digital rulebook online, which will often be found on Board Game Geek. You just type in the name of the game, you go to files, and sadly it's really annoying, but you do have to have an account in order for you to download anything from Board Game Geek. So if you don't already have an account, you should make one just so you can download files real quick and read off the rulebook on your phone. For me, if I'm browsing like this, I immediately go to the combat section of the game because I really love combat-oriented games. And so if the combat sounds interesting, then I'm more likely to pick it up. If it immediately is a turnoff and it sounds super basic, then I'm just gonna move on and look at the next game. I also immediately look at their turn structure to see what you're doing on your turn. If the rulebook can't explain that well, then that's an immediate turnoff for me too. So for me, as someone who is more experienced with gaming, just because I play games more often, I do that same exact process that I've told you, going from artwork to player count to rulebook and everything. I just dart through all that information really fast and go straight to the turn structure just to see what it feels like to actually be playing this game around the table. And then I kind of simulate that in my head. Is this something that my gaming group would enjoy? Lastly, this is something that you probably can't do in store as easily, but maybe you're browsing through a gaming section or you're looking online and you're like, okay, this game sounds interesting. Let me put this on my wish list and see if I want to commit to it before a campaign ends, or since it has a sale going on or something. The last thing you can do is, of course, go to your favorite board game reviewers or playthroughs if you just want to see how the game is played too. Either or works for you. Just search online and I'm sure there's going to be some kind of video from your favorite creators up on there. Especially for new gamers, this is a great way and probably the closest way that you can get to understanding how the game is played from people that are experienced and knowledgeable in the subject, and that show you exactly how things work out. And then they even show you all the artwork and everything and all the pieces put out together. It's one thing to see the setup drawn on simulations and kind of computer renders and art on a cover, but when you see it actually in camera, that's like the closest you can get to replicating that in your mind and whether or not it's going to be a good fit for your own gaming group, and yeah, whether or not you should buy the game. So that right there is a rundown of how I would buy a game nowadays if I was a new gamer or someone that is completely new to the hobby. For all my gamers out there, if you have any other suggestions about how new gamers can purchase and make these decisions wisely, go ahead and leave that in the comments below, because I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions too. With that said, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and if you made it to the very, very end, go ahead and comment, collection, because that's exactly what we're gonna do regardless anyway. We are building up our board game collection. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.